Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and today is March 30th, 2022. This is an important date, and I'll be getting into that on the call here today. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We do like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you, but there's a lot to share with you today. Stuff's coming at me from every direction on a lot of different levels, so I'm going to try to distill it as best I can and share with you the information I think is relevant. We have intermittently had problems with YouTube. They evidently don't like our politics. From my standpoint, that's a good sign because I really don't like their politics. But we've tried to keep politics out of these weekly calls. But in the last year or so, the politics is necessarily overlapped into what we're doing. And so to ignore the political component would be a disservice to the people that thankfully and graciously take the time to listen to our calls. So let's get started. And first, we're going to talk a little bit about the situation in Iraq. There is kind of a mixed bag in Iraq, but let's go through the good, the bad, and the ugly here. On the downside, we know that the parliament that had a session March 26th did, in fact, fail to elect president, which is a little bit of a disappointment. In addition, the parliament has thus far failed to pass their budget. Now, there's a couple of issues here. First, with regard to the election of the president, if they do not accomplish this by April 6th, there could be repercussions constitutionally, which could include dissolving the parliament. Now, we hope that doesn't happen, but if it does happen, it's going to be crystal clear who is in fact to blame for this problem, and it's the more radical Shia factions of the parliament that are doing everything they can to, at the very least, postpone, if not stop, what's going on. These are individuals, radical Shia, aligned with Iran, who want Iraq to remain basically their sock puppet and their little piggy bank. I don't think they're going to succeed. In addition, if they do not elect a president, and this is the president of the republic, which is equivalent to our Speaker of the House and then the Prime Minister, then the sitting individuals, and this is a good group that's sitting in there right now, will be the caretakers. So the fact that they don't move on won't necessarily affect what we're concerned with, which is the reinstitution of the dinar. With regard to passage of the budget, in my view, the budget passage and the reinstitution of the currency are not directly linked. The CBI operations involve the reinstitution and revaluation of the currency, and frankly, I'd like to see the revaluation and the reinstitution, rather, of their currency before the passage of the budget. Because if they pass the budget at the current rate of the dinar, they're probably going to have to hold off on making governmental payments at that rate if their plan is to reinstitute, because that really complicates the process. So while it's not good news that they didn't get these things done, by no means are these in any way a deal breaker, because once again, the CBI operates independently. Now, I will note also that the Sadrists and their coalition are the reformists, and they still do maintain a narrow margin in the parliament. So the best that the radical Shia factions can do is to try to postpone operations, but I do not think at the end of the day that the Sadrists and the reformists are going to be denied the reforms that are necessary. Again, we also know, as I mentioned earlier, that the CBI operations are not bound by parliamentary inaction, and the caretaker government is still in place. Now, as I said, today is March 30th, meaning tomorrow is March 31st. So this is the good news side of the equation. What this means is that we have a nice 6-week period from April 1st to May 15th, which is the optimum time for the reinstitution of the dinar for a number of reasons, and I'll be getting into those. First, with regard to the taxation of this reinstitution on an American citizen. If we have a reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies in the first 6 weeks of a quarter, that means we have plenty of time to force the IRS to confirm for us what the actual tax implications are. Second, if the currency comes out at a slow float, either coming out on a reinstituted basis at a slight premium over the U.S. dollar and then moving north of $3, or even if they just move back from the current $14.50 to $11.90, then move to 1-to-1 with the dollar and then go to $3 plus, maybe even $4 or $5, we have plenty of time to allow the currency to appreciate before we have to exchange in order to pay the tax, because once we hit April 1st, the tax wouldn't be due until July 15th. So that's good news for us. In addition, we know that, and let me get a hold of my notes here, I have a lot going on, that the Minister of Finance has made a public statement praising the implementation of the white papers, which implementation, he said, leads to, and I quote him, transfer to a new era. Now, a new era cannot possibly mean going from $14.50 to $11.90. That's not a new era. That's stuck in a program rate. So new era, whenever they say new era or glory days, they're talking about the dinar at a Basel III compliant rate, which has to be north of $3, and many argue could be north of $4 or even $5. In addition, the Minister of Finance calls for the CBI to release the NSCNs, which are the lower denominations, and the fills. Now, the production of the lower denomination paper money and the fills, which is in essence the coinage, is an extremely expensive proposition. And there's absolutely no reason for the release of these lower denoms, these new notes, or the fills without moving out of the program rate, because they're worth nothing, absolutely nothing. So that's good news as well. Then we have the Director General of Customs that's announced the creation of the new Customs Declaration. Now, this is to ensure the proper and recorded payment of all tariff and customs for incoming goods and services coming into the country. A substantial amount of what the Iraqi citizens consume is imported because they're in the process of rebuilding their economy, which is, of course, also part of the white paper reform. But the white paper reform also requires that there be economic diversification, not relying solely on oil. So there's a substantial amount of revenue that will be generated by this new customs declaration, and that, again, is the implementation of the white papers. And as a final note, I want to reiterate the extremely high cost of the collection of the provisional currency by substantially reducing its value. Then that currency has to be destroyed. Then there's the cost of producing the lower denoms and the coinage, which has been distributed to the 8 regional banks. And the release of this currency, once again, makes absolutely no sense without the reinstitution and revaluation of their currency. Now, again, will they go from 450 to the 1190, then move to a 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar, and then go to north of $3? Or will they do something that hadn't been done, and that is to reinstitute at north of $3 and simultaneously revalue? I doubt that will happen, but that could happen. One other note, if you go back and look at the substantial revaluation of currencies over the last, actually over 100 years, these things have occurred in January, in April, and in September. So things are looking good for the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar in the next 6 weeks, which constitutes the first half of the second quarter, which again is excellent timing for those of us that have these currencies, both in terms of the investment itself and the timely exchange, and also determining the exactly what the tax implications are, whether your currencies are in or out of a trust. Now, ordinarily on these calls, I move on and talk about the turnkey program we've put in place to assist you, because the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies is going to make a lot of Americans very wealthy individuals literally overnight. Most of the people that do hold the dinar and these other currencies are middle-class, hardworking people who have never in their life had to manage a substantial amount of money. But before I get into the turnkey program that we put together to assist you, I want to touch on a couple of other issues. First, I want to talk a little bit about the Great Reset. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Great Reset. It is a real thing, and it incorporates basically three things. First is the elimination of fossil fuels and replacing it with renewables, quote-unquote green energy. Second is the creation of a one-world digital currency. And third is the elimination, and this goes into Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and Agenda 2050, which involves the elimination of international borders, the elimination of private property, and the suspension of quote-unquote human rights. I know this sounds like a nightmare, but it is in fact the truth. It is what these individuals have in mind. You can go to the writings of Klaus Schwab. You can go to the World Economic Forum. You go to these entities, and it's right there in black and white for you to read. The other issue I want to touch on is fossil fuels. Digital currencies and the Federal Reserve. Now let's talk a little bit about fossil fuels. And in order to do that, I first want to touch on a gentleman by the name of J.D. Rockefeller, who was arguably not only one of the fathers of the petroleum industry going back 150 years, but arguably is the godfather of the United States petroleum industry. And I want to go back to his activities all the way back to 1892. He attended the Geneva Convention, and at that convention, he literally paid scientists to stop referring to petroleum and using the term fossil fuel. And the reason he wanted them to use the term fossil fuel, because it suggested that there was a scarcity of fossil fuels and that at some point in the not-too-distant future, we would run out of fossil fuels. Now, the purpose for this was simply to build up the price of petroleum to enrich himself and his cronies. But what's the truth? Because the term fossil fuel itself is a lie. The truth is that petroleum is the second largest known liquid on planet Earth, second only to water. Further, petroleum is actually a mineral that regenerates itself within the earth many times faster than we could ever possibly deplete and consume it. Fossil fuels or petroleum is created with the interaction with plants, algae, and bacteria. Nothing on planet Earth or in the universe is more plentiful than bacteria. As an example, you get yourself a bottle of water, and of course bottled water is what people use now because they want to stay away from tap water. They don't think it's clean. It may have too much fluoride for a number of reasons. If you open a bottle of bottled water and take a sip of it, close it up, an hour later, the bacteria that you left on that bottle will have multiplied 100,000 times in just that 1 hour. So if you consider that, you know that the bacteria that interacts with plants and algae is producing petroleum, not fossil fuels, at a rate that we cannot reduce. Second, and most importantly, with the fossil fuels, about 10 years ago, 1/3 of refined petroleum is used not for the combustion engine. About 2/3 was used for the combustion engine, but 1/3 was used for the production of glass, plastics, rubber, textiles, electronics, and all of our nanotechnologies. There is not enough wind and solar in the universe, let alone planet Earth, to produce one smartphone, one computer. The discussions we're having right now would be impossible without petroleum. So the notion that we're going to end the use of petroleum is, in and of itself, a bold-faced lie. Now, why is all of this important? It's important because we need to do the things that we can do to protect our privacy, to protect our wealth for ourselves and for future generations. So for the last decade, we've been doing these calls to explain in detail why people need to establish trusts in order to protect the newfound wealth from the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. But now, given the environment globally and particularly the political environment and the people running the clown show in Washington right now, whether you have currencies or not, whether you have properties that you anticipated a substantial increase in value or not, you need to establish these trusts to protect yourself. Now, part of the Great Reset, as I said, was to globalize everything. But these individuals at the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum, Schwab and his clown show, all of these people have a problem. The problem they have is the United States of America, which is a constitutional representative republic. Now, the United States of America, relative to other countries in the world, is a relatively young country. However, we are the largest standing, uninterrupted republic today in the world. And we have a constitution. Unlike the constitution in Canada or Britain or Australia or New Zealand, some of these other countries in Western Europe, that provides us with protections available in no other country. Within our Constitution is something called the Bill of Rights. This is the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. And within that Bill of Rights is the Fourth Amendment, your right to privacy, to your papers, to your personal effects, and your right to contract. And what is a trust? A trust is a contract. And this contract is what you're going to need to protect yourself. Now, the other thing that we mentioned here was the one world digital currency. This is very bad news for us They're going to eliminate hard currency, and you do have control of your currency if it's a hard currency. You can possess it, meaning you can keep it in your physical possession. If it's in a bank, you can pull it out. But once they go to a digital currency, you will not be in possession of the currency. The central banks will be in possession of it. They say it's for safety reasons. It's another one of their lies. We know that computers can be hacked all the time. Government computers are hacked. Even encrypted services are hacked. So these things can be hacked, and they can get access to our money even more easily if it's all digital and all in possession of the banks and the central banks. We also know that the government can simply shut it down if they don't like what you're doing. The most recent example is what they did in Canada. The truckers had a peaceful protest, not like the Summer of Love that we had here where they were burning down cities. These were peaceful people. What did the government of Canada do? Shut down their bank accounts. So that's a problem. Then there's also the problem of the digital wars. A third world war is going to be fought very differently. And one of the things that's going to happen initially is the release of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse weapon, which wipes out all digital information. So you'd still have to have hard copies of everything to establish what you had in your digital currency within a bank. Then there's something called the social credit score, which is that if you don't abide by their rules, the liquidity to your account is limited. This has already begun in Eastern Europe. You could have €1 million in a bank in the EU. But depending upon the country you're in, you could only access up to 1,000 to 2,500 in hard currency, just going in and withdrawing it in a given day. Now you can, make payments, use your ATM, make purchases digitally. But if you want hard currency, hard euros, irrespective of how much you have in the bank, you can only access anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 euros. This is the direction that they're headed in. So you need to establish instruments to retain control of your assets, and you need to move away from digital currencies. Now, this leads us to those of us that hold the dinar and these other currencies. Because once you go to the bank and do your exchange, you've acquired all this wealth, but guess what? Now it's in our Federal Reserve Bank, which is the central bank, and the President of the United States has just signed an executive order transitioning to digital currency. So, in my view, this is an anticipation of these exchanges, or at least part and parcel of is one of the things that they're considering, and they want to make sure they have control of that money. Now, when we talk about the Federal Reserve, there's something else we need to discuss. The Federal Reserve of the United States, even though they call it a Federal Reserve, it's one of their typical euphemisms. The Federal Reserve is not federal, it's a private corporation, and it's not a reserve. It doesn't reserve anything. It prints money in its basement, loans it to the federal government at interest, and then they instituted a federal income tax to pay back the money with interest. If you look at if you're old enough as I am, you remember getting money as a silver certificate. When I was a kid, I used to collect bottles, turn them into the grocery store, get 2 cents for every bottle, make a couple of bucks, go to the bank, exchange that for silver dollars. I used to collect silver dollars. You can't do that anymore. You're not going to get the 2 cents for the bottle, and if you have the money, it's not a silver certificate, it's a Federal Reserve note. It means it's a debt issued by a private corporation which they created out of nothing. And after you do the exchange at the bank, all of your money will be Federal Reserve notes worth basically nothing. So you're going to want to transition to tangible assets. Now, as the executive branch issued an executive order creating a digital currency, something very interesting has happened in the Senate. The Senate Democrats are introducing a bill to change the method of valuing the gold reserves held at our Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve was established in 1913, which is almost 10 years ago, We've never had an audit of the Federal Reserve. And every time someone introduces a bill to audit the Federal Reserve and audit our gold reserves, it gets shot down. It gets shot down by the Democrats. I know that sounds political, but it's a fact. Now, why would they be doing this? Why don't they want us to know what the Federal Reserve operations have been for the last 100 years, and why don't they want us to know what our actual gold reserves are? But the new bill that they've introduced is to transition from the calculation of the actual gold reserves we have. Our Federal Reserve, unlike other central banks around the world, does not value our gold reserves based on current value of gold, but based on what we purchased the gold for in the past. So the sum total of our gold reserves is based on what we purchased gold for 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 25 years ago, not what the gold's worth today. The bill that's been introduced in the Senate is going to transition from gold reserves based on the purchase price to something called mark-to-mark, meaning we will now value our gold at what it's worth today, not what we paid for it in the past. Some estimate that our gold reserves at mark-to-mark could be worth 2 to 3 times our entire national debt. Now, do you think that the Democrats introduced this bill so that we could sell some of that gold and pay down our debt? That would be the financially responsible thing to do. No. In my opinion, what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, now that we have reserves 2 to 3 times in excess of the national debt, we can just run up that national debt and pay for our new Green Deal. But they're not going to pay for it with the money that they hold in the Federal Reserve. They're going to pay for it by increasing the taxes on the American citizen. This is why we need to move out of these currencies, and we need to move into tax-sheltered investments, and we need to protect our privacy with the creation, pursuant to the Fourth Amendment, of your right to contract, i.e. establish a trust. Now let's add to that why you would need to establish a trust prior to the revaluation of these currencies and prior to going to the bank to get their new digital currency. As I said earlier, when we decided to work with Dinarians, that was because we understood that a lot of Americans are just hardworking middle-class Americans. They were going to become overnight millionaires. They weren't going to really know how to manage this money and how to protect it. And so we put a turnkey program in place to assist you. It's a 2-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Post-RV involves all of the product services and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. Now, we've established, as I said, a package of irrevocable trust because we believe that's absolutely the best bulletproof asset protection available domestically. Now, there are other entities that one can establish to provide some level of asset protection, but they don't come close to providing the asset protection of the family of trust that we've created for you. Now, let me walk through some of the other things you can do. Individuals can establish LLCs and sub-S corporations, and they can provide some level of asset protection, but primarily dividing personal assets from business assets. The problem here is that the possession of these currencies is not a business asset, it's a personal asset. In addition, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations that are owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation and disclose everything within the LLC or sub-S corp. So that's going to be inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established something called a revocable living trust, which is a statutory trust. These trusts are established primarily to exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and if properly structured, can, in some cases, substantially reduce and eliminate the federal estate tax. But the irrevocable trust cannot provide any asset protection or privacy. So they're going to be inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established individual irrevocable trusts, which can provide a higher level of asset protection, but even the individual, well, as opposed to the family of trusts, has an inherent flaw. And that is that if any asset within that trust gets involved in civil litigation, that could necessarily drag your other assets and net worth into that litigation as well. So all of those entities are statutory in nature. Many of them are regulated by the government and involve annual management fees as well. So they're simply not going to provide the asset protection you're going to need. What we've established, again, is a self-settled package of irrevocable trusts, which is, again, the best bulletproof asset protection available. In addition, if you are, in fact, the holder of currencies, you're going to need to establish this trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies in order to maximize the benefits. And I'm going to touch on these benefits here briefly. Again, by establishing this trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within this trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you're going to avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, aside from everyone knowing what you're going to be worth, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably going to be looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it came along at the precise time of this revaluation, and there's so many other things you'd rather be doing. And third and lastly, the cost of a 6-year audit would be substantially more than the cost of our asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your asset protection trust is in place and you have assigned your pre-RV currencies to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation were to take place within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours, largely because the IRS likes to go after the low-hanging fruit, and they know that anyone that has a trust like this probably has very competent legal representation. But second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends. Now, philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to want to gift currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you know have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the post-RV U.S. dollar lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum after the exchange, you can then gift the currencies to them through our specially designed gift subtrust. I'm not aware of any trust family that exists in this country that has a special gift subtrust. And by gifting currencies to them through this gift subtrust, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. In addition, the language of this subtrust allows you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency, or currency meaning you've created a sliding rule. So irrespective of the exchange rate, you can give them the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind. And third, because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, you will have complete and total control of those U.S. dollars, meaning that you can manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package pre-RV is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow you to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now, that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases, even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number two. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. And the day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million. However, this time, protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will protect you from the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust has been structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title and to our trust package, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we've created a package of trusts, and this is how it would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for 25 million. Now that you have 25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by your master trust. Now, how does this protect your newfound wealth? Well, let me give you an example. Let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars. You have an accident. The accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that sub-trust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. Now, in that scenario, the car insurance carrier will most likely negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other wealth and assets and net worth are safely protected in the other sub-trusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate sub-trusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question, meaning that the plaintiff would not have standing to pursue any other separate legal entity or person. So your trust package works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The other compartments are safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of your currencies. There is one other benefit, though, and that is if you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2. All of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. And remember, this also would incorporate all of the other issues we're dealing with pursuant to the Great Reset, the attempt to eliminate fossil fuels, the creation of a one-world digital currency, and the hyperinflation and loss of value through financial assets. Now, one of the benefits that you will receive in Phase 2 would be your ability to attend our post-RV seminar to be held approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the dinar and hopefully some of these other currencies. Now, if we get any jazz from Disney pursuant to the COVID restrictions, I'm hoping that we've gotten past this, but we are planning to have our post-RV seminar in Disney World, Florida. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust package. In addition, many of our clients have established a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 and nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with a direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust, post-RV, to these newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists on hand, as the acquisition of this wealth will require that you understand some of the more sophisticated tax strategies in order to minimize legally whatever your tax liability is, particularly in the tax environment that we're looking at with this bunch in Washington right now. We will also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to transition from currencies and financial assets to tangible assets for a number of reasons. First, to avoid the inflation that is inherent with the increase in the money supply, the establishment of the digital currency, and the increase in taxes as well. We also know that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant currencies is going to create more inflation on top of the inflation that we're experiencing right now. And so you're going to want to take a flight to tangible assets. These trusts are excellent places for tangible assets because, pursuant to Section 643A and B of the Internal Revenue Code, and again, we want this confirmed in writing after the reinstitution of the dinar, it looks like you're going to be able to buy and sell tangible assets within an irrevocable trust package like ours on a tax-deferred basis. So we can eliminate a lot of the control, inflation, and outright confiscation of our wealth by transitioning to tangible assets within an irrevocable trust package. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and is empowered to manage the other sub-trusts. One gift sub-trust, which is an optional sub-trust, which can be converted to a standard sub-trust at any time if you do not wish to control the post-RV proceeds of family and friends, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold physical assets like houses, cars, boats, etc. This trust also allows for the creation of additional sub-trusts if they become necessary post-RV. Now, this trust package was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized for our clients, which had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians and mass market this trust package, we knew it was going to be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying the package, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. In addition, there are a number of ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their trust in place and their affairs in order pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would actually be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in force and your currencies assigned to that trust prior to the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for all of the reasons that we've stated here today. Now, we will be going to a Q&A in just a minute, and we will be giving you our contact information. But before we do, and for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you should seriously consider getting our initial package to understand how you could proceed and establish one of our trust packages. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 39 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 80 years' experience working precisely in this niche area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for about 10 years, it's actually almost 11 years working in this area. And it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they've somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, under our system of civil procedure, it's just the reverse. It's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them, and it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced directly in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death, and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are, of course, investments, losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. So I'm going to go to the Q&A in just a moment. Before I open the Q&A, I strongly suggest that if you are interested in the things we've discussed here, you contact us to get our initial package. It does contain everything you need if you decide to proceed with the establishment of your own package of asset protection trusts, but it has a lot of information about us, about the currencies, about the evaluation. You can review the package, contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. Now, you can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. You can contact us by email, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com, or you can phone us. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. So I'm going to go ahead and opened our Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can just dial it, check in, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Our first caller here is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Praveen from New York. I have a question. Today they're supposed to the Parliament is supposed to have another meeting to elect the president. Did they elect the president or no?
I do not know as yet, although that should have been accomplished. Unfortunately, I'm on conference calls from the moment I get up in the morning in order to prepare for this call. I'm actually supposed to go to another call after this call. As a matter of fact, that call starts in 6 minutes, so I may not get in at the beginning. So I'll try to find out. But as we speak right now, I don't know whether that's the case or not. But as I said earlier in the call, while we want to get this done, there is a caretaker government in place, and we do have some good people in place right now. So the fact that they may not elect a president today, in my view, is not a deal breaker for the reinstitution of their currency at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay, bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 832. That's 832. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. The Parliament, they didn't get a quorum today, so there's no election of any president or prime minister.
Thanks for that information.
I think they have until April 6th to get it done. Otherwise, they may dissolve the Parliament. And my personal view is that if they don't elect a government, we're in for a longer wait.
That's possible. My only argument is, in and of itself, that's not a deal breaker, because remember, CBI operations are independent and they do have a caretaker government in place. Lastly, there's a good chance that won't happen, only because at this point it's crystal clear that it's the radical Shia factions that are doing this, and if they have to form a new government, those people will not be reelected. So let's hope that if they don't see the light, they start to feel the heat.
Yeah, I hope so too, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Sure. Bye-bye now. You know, as dysfunctional as the Iraqi government is, unfortunately, it kind of reminds me of our government right now. So hopefully they'll get their act together, and it may even take us longer, but it is what it is at this point. Our next caller is area code 301. That's 301.
Yes, Jim. How are you?
Okay. How?
I'm good. I am still kind of confused on how the package work. I have the package, but I need to know whether or not, when it comes to the asset, does it mean after the RV is taken care of, as far as purchasing a home or anything like that, will that go into that asset?
Well, let's say, okay, you've established the trust, you've assigned the currencies to the trust, the currencies subsequently revalue. You go to the bank, negotiate your exchange, they establish a trust bank account at that bank, point of exchange. The money then goes into that trust bank account, and at that point, whatever it is you wish to purchase, homes, cars, whatever, you can go ahead and purchase those items. But when you go to purchase the item, it will not be titled to you personally. It will be titled to a subtrust. You will contact us, tell us what you're going to do. The subtrust will be created. So let's say, for example, you were purchasing a home. I'm just making this up now, in the Wexford neighborhood. So you call us and we create the Wexford Real Estate Subtrust. When you go to close on that home, it will be titled to the Wexford Real Estate Subtrust with you as the beneficiary and naming the trustee. And that's how you'll fund the subtrusts.
Okay. Okay, and that's with everything else of purchase.
Everything you wish to place in trust, correct.
Okay. Okay. And how does it go when, as far as the gift trust, do you set up the gift trust as you go along with gifting?
Okay. When you apply, submit your application to establish a trust. The last question is, do you wish to establish a gift trust? All you do is give us the name of that gift trust. So, for example, and I don't mind saying what mine is. I have nothing to hide. My last name's George. I have the George Family Asset Management Trust, and I have the George Family Gift Trust. Now, when you receive your trust package from us, you receive instructions and you receive some supplemental documents one of the documents you receive is the exchange protocol if you have one of our trusts. So when you go to the bank to do your exchange, you will not inform them you have a gift trust. The only thing you're doing is negotiating the exchange, getting all of the money in your bank trust account, the master trust. Mm-hmm. After that money is available for withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't want to walk out of the bank. It's in our stuff too. You don't want to walk out of the bank with a 10 or 21-day hold on your money. You want to make sure that money's available. After that money's available, you go back to the bank with your gift subtrust. You will set up bank accounts for everyone that you've gifted in that subtrust, and you will transfer U.S. dollars from your master trust bank account to each of the gift subtrusts. Okay. The reason we don't want to inform them about the gift subtrust is because these banks are difficult to deal with. So we call it the Jed Clampett effect. Once the money is in your trust bank account and you can withdraw it, then you're in control.
Okay. All
right.
And the taxes come out automatically, or how does that work on paying for taxes?
In my opinion, they should not, but they may be. In order for banks to participate in the exchange, they may have already established a relationship with the Treasury to withhold the tax. However, if Section 643A and B apply, theoretically there should be a tax deferral if the money's within trust. That's why we keep wanting the revaluation early in a given quarter, so that gives us time to compel the Treasury to provide the documentation we need to say to the bank, there is no tax. It's tax deferred if it's in trust.
Okay.
But if, for example, the revaluation were to happen today, taxes would be due on April 15th. That simply is not enough time to ascertain, to confirm the tax deferral. So we'll have no option but to pay the tax and simultaneously file for a refund citing Section 643A and B, because if they disallow A and B, whether it's legit or not, we're looking at 100% penalty. So we cannot allow that to happen.
Right.
We're better off. Yeah. So that's why I said it's good news. They can't stick us. So we've got another 6-week beautiful window from April 1st to May 15th.
Okay. And one more question. I am a paraplegic, and I want to be able to establish a health insurance trust for my medical needs.
Well, certainly I'm sorry for your condition, but that can absolutely be established. In addition, one of the estate planning things we're going to deal with is possessing this trust does protect you irrespective of what state you live in. But we still want people after the revaluation, and this is done statutorily with local attorneys, to re-up your will, your financial power of attorney, your healthcare power of attorney, your medical directives, and also if you want to establish special needs and medical trusts and things of that nature, we can assist you with that as well.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you so much, Jim, for all your time.
Yes, ma'am. By the way, you're in area code 301. Are you in Maryland?
That is correct.
Where in Maryland are you?
I am in Lanham.
Okay. The reason
Prince
I say
George's
that,
County.
I know I'm born and raised from Maryland, Towson, Maryland. So, and of course I worked in D.C., so I'm very familiar with the area. But as a matter of fact, there's some issues with Maryland, some peculiarities with Maryland that I may have to deal with, because I have a lot of family in Maryland. I'm going to have to deal with too beyond this trust, so we're kind of in the same boat there. But I just wanted to check. But thanks for your call, and best of luck.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Our next caller is area code 843. That's 843. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Jim, and I want to tell you that I'm a first-time caller. But I've been listening to you for years. I really enjoy the information that you put out, and I've really, as of late, been studying this trust. So I have two questions, and forgive the first one if you may have already covered it. But if the CBI is in the sole control of the Iraqi dinar and what the rate is, why won't the CBI just make a change in the rate to what they feel is correct? Like, for instance, I don't know, 10 cents. And the second question is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, okay. Well, you want me to answer that one first?
Yeah, if you don't mind, that'll be fine. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Now, the fact that the CBI has the unilateral ability to pull the trigger doesn't mean that they're going to do it arbitrarily. There are still other things that they wanted to get in place, implementation of the white papers, if possible, get the government in place, get the budget done. The reduction in the exchange rate was done. Now, remember, Parliament also created the Finance Committee that was supposed to oversee the operations of the CBI. But again, that was just another complicated overlay that was kind of ineffectual. So I do believe that the CBI is going to act soon for the simple reason that now that they're talking about the release of the lower denoms and the fills, the coinage, again, as I said on the call, it makes absolutely no sense to even discuss to pay the exorbitant cost of creating these lower denoms and all of the fills and then distributing to the 8 regional banks. There's absolutely no reason to do this unless they reinstitute. And to go from 1450 to 1190 doesn't help them at all. The only thing that works for them is that at minimum a 1-to-1 or slight premium over the dollar. Add to that the fact that the finance minister continues to talk about their new era. Their new era is not going from 1450 to 1190. The new era, or the glory day, is referring to a Basel III compliant, which has got to be north of $3, and some say north of $4 or even $5.
Yes, sir. Well, I just asked that question. I'll be up front with you. I got my first Iraqi dinar, I'll say, in 2004 and 2005 when I was on the ground there, and I bought some since then. I just it's really puzzling how they've gone through all these different things, and like I said, I've been listening to you for years, and it's just like we're right there, but like you keep saying, they always seem to pull the victory from their own mouth. The second question is in regards to the trust. I know that there's a whole bunch of people that live in whole other different states. If I recall, and by the way, I should have prefaced this beforehand. I hope your daughter's doing well from her car accident. She's fully recovered.
Thank you.
But you're welcome, sir. But I believe you reside in Tennessee. I reside in South Carolina, if you couldn't tell by the zip code. But we don't.
South Carolina.
We don't have. I'm sorry.
I said I lived in Hilton Head for 15 years. I know South Carolina well.
Yes, sir. I live in the Charleston-Summerville area.
Beautiful area.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, it's not what it used to be, and I'm ready to get out.
Oh my God! Well, it's funny you mentioned, because I have relatives in Baltimore that just moved to Charleston because of what's happened, the mess in Baltimore, and they absolutely love Charleston. So that's it's not good. Unfortunately, I guess the urban environment is just not a good one anymore.
No, sir. It's been so overgrown and populated. I used to live in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia, and I got here in the 92, 93 time frame. And since then, it's busted wide open. Traffic, it's not uncommon to sit in an hour or two's worth of traffic, just like you do on the D.C. Beltway or Route 4 or up there on 70 heading into Pennsylvania.
Breaks my heart.
It's
breaks
stupid.
My heart. Well, I tell you, one of the reasons I'm staying in Tennessee, at least for now, because I want to move south and get back on the water. But one of the reasons I'm staying here is because there's no state tax here. And if I went, for example, to North Carolina, and there's some nice places there, but they got a 9% state tax, so on every million I'm paying $90,000 in state taxes, so it's not worth the move. But we'll see what happens.
Right. Well, my question was in regards. My second question, Jim, was in regards to the trust and the different state laws. like, for instance, I know that Tennessee has a state law where they have applicable asset protection laws in place. I can also tell you that, South Carolina does not at all. Like, I was completely floored by this. So if we get a trust from Trust Unlimited and we live outside of, and I'm just using Tennessee as an example because I know for a fact that Tennessee has these laws in place. We don't live in Tennessee. How is the trust going to affect residents in other states that may not have the same asset protection laws that the state of Tennessee has?
Okay. This trust provides privacy and asset protection for any American citizen living any of the 50 states. And it's got the universal provisions that apply to all 50 states. So you will have privacy. I'll give you an example. Someone decides to do a background check on you. You have our trust. All of your assets are in that trust. They do a background check on you. They find nothing. They don't find the existence of the trust, and they don't find that you own any assets when they take your social and run that. This would be the case if someone hired a private investigator or a forensic accountant or a government official. They find nothing. Okay? They somehow determine that you have a trust. So they contact you and they say, what's in your trust? And you respond, it's none of your business. Then you want to go to a court? You want to open this trust? Then you go to a court and you present probable cause for fraud or some other violation. Otherwise, it's none of your business what's in my trust. So that's how it would work. Now, if you're being sued, of course, if you're being sued, one of the questions any 101 litigator would ask, are you the settler, beneficiary, or trustee of a trust? You have to tell them the truth. But what happens is this trust is retroactively re-domiciled in Wyoming if you're ever being sued, which means that they're going to have to go to Wyoming, post a bond, hire a Wyoming attorney, and then present cause why they should pierce the veil. So they've spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars without knowing if there's a nickel in that trust. So what are they going to do? They're going to walk away.
Okay. Well, I hope you understand the reason why I asked that question because, I'm doing my research. Like I said, I've been listening to it for years, and this is something I want to do, but I want to make sure across the board that I'm fully protected. And when I researched South Carolina laws and found out that there was no asset protection, I began digging a little deeper, and I need to understand before I commit, how this is going to protect me if I'm residing in South Carolina.
Right. Well, as I said, you're and the other beauty of it is on a day-to-day basis you operate as though you don't have a trust. Individuals that have established trusts like this in the past do a very simple thing. They have their trustee automatically transfer funds from their trust account to their personal checking or savings. So on a day-to-day basis, it's an employer check. It's automatically deposited in your account. You have your ATM. You can write checks. You got whatever liquidity you need. It's just that simple.
Okay. Jim, I thank you very much. I hope you have a good day. And, again, I hope your daughter's doing well and is fully recovered, and I appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you, sir. One last question. Were you in the service?
No, sir. I was private contract over there from the mid-2004 to the beginning of 2006 as a fireman combat medic.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service, my friend.
Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate it.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, that was a good call. Our next caller is area code 970. That's 970. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Julie, formerly of Colorado, now living in the Ozarks in Arkansas.
Okay, it says
not
here
far from you.
That's right. It says here Fort Collins. So I'm still using my old phone number too.
Yep. I'm still using the same number. Have had that number for over 20 years.
Yeah,
but,
you don't want to change.
My question is, and the other thing that I kind of wanted to, I'll ask my question first. I have additional, assets, and I know part of we don't want to, activate the trust for those purposes to, for auditing purposes. But I have like physical gold and silver. I have cryptocurrency, and of course I have, investments in the stock market. What happens if there's a crypto boom before the dinar or any of the other fiat currencies revalue?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked that question. I've had people email me, existing clients. We do have clients that do have other physical assets like gold, silver, and cryptos. What we've suggested they do, because we're working exclusively with the currency. I am a client. I've had your trust now for several years. Yeah. Yes, I'm aware of that. I'm just saying, but what I'm saying to you right now is something I would only say to an existing client. As you know, when you received your trust package, you got instructions, you got the trust, and a half a dozen supplemental documents. One of the documents that you got was the assignment minutes of meeting for the assignment of your currencies to the trust. What we've suggested people do that have cryptos and precious metals is take that document, the second paragraph that deals specifically with currencies, pull that out, and then you can put something along the lines of any and all cryptos and or precious or industrial metals in my possession or that I should subsequently acquire is hereby assigned to my trust. Create that separate document, get it signed and notarized. You will have assigned all of those other all those other tangible assets, and any in kind that you subsequently purchase will be assigned to the trust.
Okay, so, but do we want to activate the trust if there's a big crypto boom, or do we want to just sit on it till...
No, as long as you've assigned those currencies to the trust, that's all you have to do. The only reason the bank is an issue is because by assigning currencies, you have to go to a bank to exchange into the USD. But the other assets, you're doing it this way, not only from a privacy standpoint, but again, you want to get them out of title and into the trust before they appreciate or as they appreciate. So as I said, all you need to do is amend that form, taking out the currency language and inserting the other asset language in there, and get that phrase in there, and that I should subsequently acquire, and that way all of those financial tangible assets that you possess or should subsequently acquire will all be in trust.
Okay, so but do I need to have open a trust bank account then?
No. All you need to do, no, we don't do that.
Okay.
All you need to do is create the form to assign the currencies. We're not marching to the bank until after the global revaluation.
Right. So then those cryptocurrencies would just go into my current bank account, but I would be protected because they've been assigned to my trust.
Correct.
Okay. Perfect. That's what I needed to know. So what I wanted to share with some of the people that are still on the fence, wondering, if this is for me, I want to share with them. I don't know that they, they probably don't realize this is the same type of trust that all of the wealthy people have, the Kennedys, the Rockefellers, and that's why they're never sued, or if they are sued, like Chappaquiddick, it was just the insurance policy.
Yeah,
it's exactly what the rich and wealthy use, so that's why they don't want us common folk to know about it.
Well, with regard to the Kennedy issue, there was even more involved in that. I happen to know one of the attorneys that was involved in that negotiation. Let me give you one thing about that. Basically, what happened was, now, of course, on the criminal side, what they did, they dropped the felony charge, which Edward Kennedy should have gotten for leaving the scene of an accident. He could have been charged with felony manslaughter because the young lady did not drown, as many people say. She was actually asphyxiated. There was an air bubble in that car that they said lasted from anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and one side of the car with the car door was only under 18 inches of water. But Edward, for reasons that I'll just leave up to anyone else's imagination, probably because he was drunk, decided to leave the scene. But basically the story was this. Look, Edward Kennedy doesn't own anything. Everything's in trust. He probably the money or the clout to sue. The criminal charge, because he was running for president, the criminal charge was mysteriously dropped to a misdemeanor, which didn't affect his ability to run for president. But basically, the Kopechne's had to do two things. They had to agree to never be interviewed or discuss this case, and that whatever agreement was made was settled. Now, my understanding is that they were middle-class people of modest means living in Ohio who later had a very palatial home on the water in Massachusetts, and every January they each got a brand-new Lincoln. That's the conspicuous part of it. But, I mean, everyone at the time kind of thought, this is kind of weird. They just disappeared. We don't, never hear from them. Well, that was because that was part of the deal. But the reason all of that was possible was because of the Kennedy Family Trust. Now, I'm not saying people should establish trust to protect them from bad behavior. I'm simply saying that these trusts can protect individuals. Another example is that Caroline Kennedy, remember, flirted with the possibility of running for Senate, but all of their assets are in trust. And the disclosure required that she reveal what was in trust, and that was the linchpin that made her decide not to run, because she didn't know that she could win. She didn't want to, but some estimated the value was $600 million. Who knows?
Another question, Jim. Should a life policy be assigned to the trust?
No, it's not necessary.
Okay.
Remember, that's tax-free. Nor does the liability umbrellas. People can buy. As a matter of fact, the previous caller was talking about asset protection. You can buy $1 million, umbrella policy for about $1.50. As a matter of fact, after the RV, one of the requirements, if there's a suit and you're going to Wyoming, is to have an umbrella policy. But again, we'll discuss all of that post RV. But that that costs $1.50, $250. It's a minimal amount. So we'll be dealing with all of that post.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim.
Sure.
I appreciate you.
Yes, thanks so much. Thanks for the call. Bye now.
Bye.
Our next caller here is area code 312. That's got to be Les.
Yes, it is. Finally me. Hi, Jim. How are you?
How you doing, my friend? I'm good. How you doing?
All righty. Hats off to that combat medic. That was my MOS as well. But I didn't see any action, though.
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about you. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Military and first responders are top drawer with me, man.
Yeah, I heard that. Great. I appreciate them all as well. The one caller touched on something that I had my question, which was regarding the stock market and currency going digital. Will the currency, when it's digital, will it still ring up as dollars or what?
Well,
because if it's not hard currency, you can't get it.
Actually, they're not called dollars anymore because you can't exchange them for anything. They're called notes. They'll still be notes, but they'll be digital. And it's digital anyway. When the Federal Reserve, when the United States government, federal government, borrows money from the Federal Reserve, they don't, send over a couple of trucks of money. It's all done digitally. The difference now is it trickle down to our accounts, and it's all going to be digital. They're going to do away with hard currency. Now, they were flirting with doing that for a few years back with the rainbow currency, just making money all different colors, and then saying, for example, okay, the rainbow currency is going to be issued on June 1st, year X, but on January 1st next year, all of your old currency will be invalid. The reason they were going to do that is they were get all that dark money out there that they didn't know, has to be turned in order to transition to the rainbow. They're just stepping over that and saying, we're just going digital now. But that means that they have possession. We don't have possession. It's not a hard currency. So, it's just like when they created the income tax. We got the federal income tax pursuant to Article 5 convention that stipulated that the tax was going to be only 7% on the earnings of people above $500,000. So they said we're only going to tax 0.1% of 1% of the American people. So everyone said, okay. And then look what happened. Well, that's going to happen when they go digital. They're going to be all over. It's going to be a mess. So we can't change the fact that they're going to go digital, but we can reposition our assets out of the currencies into other things that we have control of. And we can protect our privacy and our asset protection by putting all of those things in trust, because we still have a Constitution, which still has a Bill of Rights, which still has a Fourth Amendment, which still allows you to contract and create a trust, which is settled law in Western law for the last 2,000 years. So that, the fact that this country has a Constitution and has a Bill of Rights, it just galls them. They just can't get their fingers on it. They're doing everything they can to get as much control as they can. But like I said, there are still instruments out there like a trust like ours and certain tangible assets that they just can't get their hands on, and we just need to take advantage of it.
Okay. So one last part of that question is, if my neighbor needs to borrow $50 and we're digital, how does that happen?
How does it happen?
Or how would that happen if everything's digital?
Well, that's a good question. We probably will have checking accounts and things like that, which would be you could physically go to the bank and do a transfer, or you could issue a check. The difference is that you won't have hard cash. You'll just have the digital transfer.
I got that part, but
yeah,
everybody's going to have everybody will have an account then.
That's right. It'll all be digital on the consumer level. So it'll all be,
whether they have a bank account or not.
You won't have physical paper. It'll all be electronic. They'll electronically transfer money to her account, and her account, when she pulls it up on her smartphone, will electronically show the $50 transfer from your account to her account. What she can't do is go get $50 in hard cash. It's digital.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool beans.
And
thanks
believe
again.
Me, the fact that they have doing this, it's going to be phased in. It's not going to be overnight. Hard currency's gone. Right. It's going to be what we're going to do with the rainbow currency. You will have maybe a certain amount of time to turn in your hard currency. So people that have hoarded money and they pay cash for everything, well, what's going to happen? One day, no one's going to be able to accept their cash. They're going to have to go to the bank and transfer that into digital currency and give possession. And possession is control. Giving possession to the central bank. You don't have possession of that currency anymore because it's digital.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking my call. Thanks for your time, and say hi to the professor.
Will do. Take care, my friend.
Likewise.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was our last caller for today. Again, I want to thank all of you for listening to the call. I certainly hope it was informative, particularly for our newer callers. If the things we've discussed here are of interest to you, please contact us, get our initial package. You're under no obligation by doing so, even though the package does contain everything you need should you wish to go ahead and establish your own personal self-settled asset protection trust. You can certainly contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. There's a lot of information in that package about us, about trusts, about the currencies and the evaluation. There will be no consultation fee should you contact us for additional information. We look forward to speaking with you and helping you in every way. Now, of course, we will have a call next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and next Wednesday, we will try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our call. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.